Hello and welcome to my easy to understand guide to the 2016 version of the Jungle Book film. This video is going to be particularly relevant for you if you are studying A-level media studies on the OCR exam board, as this is currently one of the films that they say you should study. This film will only ever get asked about in relation to industries and contexts, so I'm going to go through those in this video now. So this film is obviously made by Walt Disney Pictures, very large film production company, one of the big six or the big five, depending on when you're watching this video. The director is Jon Favreau, who's an actor as well. He's got a reasonable level of fame. That may have drawn in some audiences knowing that he was behind the film. The fact that it's based on an existing film minimises your risks as a company. You're not making something totally new, totally different, which could be quite risky. If you're basing it on an existing product, whether that's a book or an existing film, that helps to make sure that you've already got a pre-sold audience. Disney have been doing this a lot with their films recently. So taking films that were classic animated films in the 1950s and 60s and upwards to the 80s and 90s, and then remaking them in the last 10-15 years as live action movies. And like I said, this ensures a pre-sold audience of people who will go and see these films just to see the live action version. The fact that this had to be made as a live action movie at all just highlights how audiences are now expecting new technologies to be used. It's not enough just to re-release the old Jungle Book from 1967. We want something new, we want something different, we want CGI, we want special effects. So, potentially the fact that it was remade as a live action movie, reflecting this context of audience expectation and new technologies and the popularity of those new technologies. The live action versions do tend to be slightly darker than the original animated versions, and that's because potentially they're appealing to an adult audience, potentially these people who went and saw the film or who were aware of their film when they were children and are now adults going to see the film. So they're wanting something potentially a little darker. Having said that though, Disney still need to make sure the films are family friendly. They want to ensure as wide a possible an audience can see it. So they will still try and make the film a U or a PG certificate to try and draw in the biggest possible audience and make the most amount of money. When making the film, Jon Favreau did admit that he did draw some inspiration from some older films. So the shots through the undergrowth in this scene here, he said that he kind of drew on inspiration from previous Disney films like Bambi. And he did that because he wanted to pay homage to those films from his childhood and because they would also be familiar and recognisable to audiences. Disney hired a company called MPC to do the kind of digital CGI effects within the film. And Disney do have the budget to do a lot of this themselves, but because they are a very large company, because their effects take thousands of people now on films, they have the money to hire in these people from other companies and to make sure this film therefore is as realistic as possible. The CGI helped to add that level of realism to the film that audiences often enjoy. The animation and the creation of these characters and animals digitally. If it's not realistic enough, audiences often are put off from the film. The production for the film, quite unusual. They had to use a very high budget because of course they can't get all these actual animals in to act. So all of the animals are CGI, and Mowgli is the only kind of human character for the vast majority of the film. So Mowgli, the young boy, was on a kind of green screen soundstage in a studio, and the rest of the animals and characters were added in via CGI. So this is very reflective of Disney's huge budget and resources. They were able to use technologies such as motion capture on real human actors who were pretending to be the animals, and that meant they could get particularly like body language and mannerisms of the actual actors in that would be familiar to audiences. They were able to use virtual sets, so they built virtual sets on computers, and that helped them to establish where things were going to happen in relation to the actors. The visual effects in the film won several awards, showing just how successful it was. The makers of the film wanted to draw some similarities between this film and the original animated film, so they did use some music from the original animated film, like The Bare Necessities. That helped to market this new version of the film, because using something familiar like a song from the original would help to be recognisable to an audience within things like trailers. It also means that Disney had the copyright on the original music track. They don't have to get another piece of music. They already own the rights to The Bare Necessities. So you're using music that your company owns the rights to. Again, saves you money in the long run. At the same time as this Disney version was being made, a Warner Brothers version of The Jungle Book was being made elsewhere. So a competing product based around the same story. This is very worrying for Disney because obviously it adds competition and that potentially is going to dilute your audience and therefore take away from your profits. And the use of that Bare Necessities song, which Disney had the rights to and that Warner Brothers would never be able to get the rights to, helped to make their films seem more popular, and it helped to really illustrate the connections between the Disney 2016 version and the Disney 1967 version. It made the Disney version one feel more authentic than the Warner Brothers one. Walt Disney is obviously a very large company, very powerful, is horizontally and vertically integrated, and that gives it the power to do things that other companies cannot. They were able to do their own distribution using their own in-house distribution company called Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. And being able to do your own distribution in-house saves you money and it gives you more creative control over the distribution process. The casting of stars is very important in marketing a film now. So there were lots of famous stars cast in this film. So for example, Idris Elba, Lupita Nyong'o, Bill Murray, Scarlett Johansson. Their names are all very clearly mentioned on the marketing materials like the poster. And that helps to draw in their fans and therefore their pre-sold audiences. The diversity of the cast as well might help to draw in global audiences, and maybe something that Disney is doing to reflect the fact that some of their older films were very lacking in diversity, and perhaps they want to show in a more modern context that they can be more diverse and they can be more reflective of an ever-changing ethnic world. Obviously, with a new film in 2016, they made full use of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. They used to put trailers on there, behind the scenes interviews and articles, chats with the cast, competitions, that kind of thing. They had the making of on YouTube as well for a short time. So lots of things on social media that could be shared and liked and commented on. And that's a great way of reaching a global audience. They also featured the trailer for the film in the ad break for the Super Bowl in America. The Super Bowl ad breaks are highly coveted ad breaks. They cost a huge amount of money to get just a 30-second tiny slot for your trailers, and the average trailer for Jungle Book is about a minute and a half. So it would have cost literally billions of dollars in order to place the trailer in that ad break, but they are so it's such a popular ad break that many people will just watch for the trailers and the adverts. So it's a great way of targeting a really massive mainstream global audience. They had a variety of posters for the film to target different audiences as well. So they had some posters that were a bit more cute and light-hearted and less dark, focusing on the animals to target young families and children. They had some posters that were clearly a lot darker and potentially they were to target an older audience. There were some posters that focused on the action sequences and some trailers that focused on the action sequences as well, potentially to draw in the young adult audience as well. They made full use of other technologies too. So for example, they had an interactive poster on Snapchat and they had a particular lens that you could use for the Jungle Book, so to turn you into different characters. And so making use of technology that particularly would appeal to young people. Disney have their own conventions every year. So there was a D23 Expo, which is a kind of convention where lots of people can get together to find out about the new Disney films and products coming out. They presented the trailer and they had sneak peeks of the film at that D23 Expo. And this would have targeted fans of Disney, those opinion leaders, and it would have created a lot of publicity for the film. They ran a competition with the Guardian newspaper where readers could enter the competition to win tickets and merchandise. And winning freebies is always a good way of attracting audiences. Disney obviously have their own range of theme parks, one of which is Disney's Animal Kingdom. They actually created a new ride and a new experience for people going to the park based around the 2016 Jungle Book film. So that was a great way again of targeting young people, targeting families and increasing the publicity for the film. They formed a synergetic partnership with with companies such as Airbnb. So they did a kind of deal whereby Airbnb advertised the film in conjunction with discounts on treehouse-based properties. So if you wanted to stay in a treehouse-style Airbnb, you would come across the marketing for the Jungle Book. Similar to the 1967 film, they had a range of toys and other merchandise for the film that they were able to sell. The website for the film had a range of sections, obviously had the trailer, links to social media, lots of images from the film, also had behind the scenes as well. There was an educational section to the website targeting perhaps parents and teachers at schools, allowing students and children to complete activities relating to the Jungle Book. Cast and crew from the film did multiple interviews on TV and radio to talk about the film, talk about how it was made, talk about the special effects and the CGI, and that helped to draw in a range of audiences. There was quite a big focus on Spanish and other Latino-based TV shows and radio shows as well. And this was because they were really actively trying to target a kind of Hispanic market, because they know, Disney as a company know that is going to increase their profits massively, particularly within America. This film is obviously a little bit darker in terms of tones, themes and narratives than the original Jungle Book film. So instead of getting a U certificate, it got a PG certificate. But with the introduction of things like Disney Plus, almost the regulation for films like this has become null and void because, you know, even if you don't go and see it at the cinema, a lot of children can now get hold of the film anyway on streaming sites. The budget for the film was 175 million, which is huge budget, but just goes to show how much money Disney has, that they can spend that much on a film. It made nearly $1 billion at the box office, $966 million at the box office worldwide, which again is a huge amount of money and just goes to show that there is still a market for these films, even sort of 60 years down the line. The film was eventually released in 70 countries and they had 3D versions as well as the 2D versions in cinemas. So, you know, the wealth of Disney coming through in the distribution of the film as well. So that was my easy to understand guide to the 2016 version of the Jungle Book. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for lots of other videos that are going to be relevant for you for both GCSE and A-level media studies. If there are any videos though that I don't yet already have, don't forget you can leave a comment below. I do read them, I do try and respond, and I will do what I can if there are any videos that you would like.